So tell us a little bit, where are we? Tell us about the history
Sure,
of this.
sure. We're in the sanctuary of Fountain of Life Covenant Church. This fall will be my 30th anniversary as a senior pastor here. Our church started 40 years ago in my mother's living room, and we built this new sanctuary 4 years ago. This used to be the backyard where our kids played during church, and we wanted to, we were tired of doing two services, and we wanted to create a multi-purpose facility where we could have worship service, of course, but also movie showings, presentations, concerts, plays. The mayoral debate was held here a few years ago. The five-way debate was held here. So it serves as a real good community venue for the South Side.
Did you imagine having something built like this when you were deciding to be a pastor? Did you think you could have this? I mean, this is a nice church.
You know, based upon what I tangibly saw or experienced, no. But in my heart, and you know, we have this deep faith tradition. There was a voice inside saying, one day you're not going to be in obscurity in a living room. What I actually heard in my heart as a teenager, that you're going to be on a hill and the whole city is going to be able to see your work. I've been holding that in my heart since 1979.
That's wonderful.
David Smith, my sister, in that prayer meeting, we all remember it. Those are things we prayed. So nothing that I ever saw made me believe it, but it was the things I didn't see that made me believe it. And in our community, the church has always been central. So I thought, for me, it's important that it can accommodate the community. It can provide some space for people to come together. But I also think people of faith need to be inspired by what they see. So the aesthetics of it was really important. But this has been in the making in terms of planning and fundraising. We had probably 2 to 3 failed attempts until this one worked.
Wow.
So a lot of failure in this.
Well, that's good for other leaders to hear and people to hear.
Sure.
Sometimes you have to fail to build where you want to get.
I think what's interesting, Henry, is that I'm from Madison, so I have a sense of how the community works. When newer pastors are coming from out of town, sometimes they try to do things the way they saw it in Chicago or Milwaukee and other places. And Madison, as you know, is just a different animal. It's very different. So understanding that you've got to grow with folks, you've got to be committed to folks, and they've got to know that you want to grow them and not just your ministry. So what I love about this place is everyone did it. We don't, I think we have one doctor, maybe 1 or 2 attorneys, but it's a working class church. But we had this campaign, 175 by 175. We asked 175 people to do $175 a month to get the down payment.
I like that.
And the folks did it. We launched a campaign in April, and we broke ground in June of that same year and opened the very next year. So this is proof of not only faith, but what happens when hardworking, everyday folks, single moms, working families, retired folks, kicked in. My mom, my sister, my family, deacons, our church mothers, everyone pulled their weight, and that's how we pulled this off.
So let's stick with faith, because I think people who know you now, they know he's a pastor, but your reputation's kind of surpassed the pastor part, I think, in the community. But everything comes from faith, right? So it sounds like I'm listening to you. It's like this whole dream, and Mount Nehemiah, Fountain of Life, all this stuff, Justified Anger, our Madison play, all that came from being a man of faith.
Definitely. It's interesting. You said I sort of have surpassed what the pastorate is. But my theological persuasion is I'm just attaining what it means to be a pastor. Because a pastor traditionally have been change agents, prophetic voices, places that encourage community development and work together. And even my example, of Jesus in Scripture, at a very superficial glance, he went around preaching and doing good things for folks. But working with women, touching children, touching lepers, he was really about systemic change. He was really trying to touch the disenfranchised, those that had been outclassed. So it wasn't just haphazard that he touched who he did, that he hung out with tax collectors, he went into their homes. He was showing that he was for the down and out. And so for me, part of ministry, part of the pastorate is being multidimensional. It's actually one of my desires to teach and train and mentor younger pastors about what I think holistic ministry looks like. But you're right, I was affirmed here as the leader 30 years ago. When I was 24 years old, We had about 20 people in our church.
You look
most of
older than
them-
that, man. You look about 65 or something.
Oh, really? Really? Well, you need to put your glasses on. You know I look good. You know I look good. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to tell your mom.
Don't tell my mom.
I'm going to tell your mom.
Don't tell
Right?
my
I'm going
mom
to tweet
that.
her.
I was
Right?
joking, Mom. I was joking.
He meant it. But they said, we believe that that you're a leader in this community, that you inspire us, that you got a vision that helps the community. So before I traveled internationally, before I wrote books, before I did some of the work that I'm doing, before I taught at the White House, folks right in that foyer said, you're our leader and you're a leader for this community. And whenever I feel that I'm questioning my call in some of these other circles, I remember what these folks said when I was 24, not yet married, not yet accomplished, but they believed in something that was inside of me, and that's life-changing. And so everything that I do is about providing some support so that people feel believed in, because we have to help people develop that faith, and we have to carry that faith for them until they're ready to carry it themselves.
So that's Fountain of Life. Then there's Nehemiah, right? They're two different entities.
Two different
Okay.
entities.
And I think people from outside looking in, they just think that's G's operation over there. Fountain of Life, Nehemiah, Just for Anger, One Man. They don't understand the differences.
Sure.
And like you told me earlier, I'm like, you have two offices. He's like, yeah, I have two different jobs, right?
Right.
I'm like, well, that's a good point. So why don't you tell us, Fountain of Life was the church.
Sure.
But tell us about Nehemiah.
Sure. Nehemiah was an outgrowth of the church. Nehemiah actually turns 25 years old this fall. And I noticed that as the black community pretty much doubled in size from 1980 to 1990, the number of police officers, teachers, administrators, social workers, judges weren't keeping up with those changes. And so we started making some noise about the need to diversify human services and just service delivery in general. So I quit my job at the university to create what's called a Community Development Corporation. And that's Nehemiah's full name, the Nehemiah Community Development Corporation. And the whole idea was we wanted to build capacity in the African American children and youth and families. And so we were subcontracted by the county, by the state, to provide culturally competent services. So mentoring, therapeutic mentoring. We did in-home family therapy, case management. We did that for years. We ran a contract for the county for 10 years. That's where we hired people like Jackie Hunt, folks who had never worked before. I met Jackie when she had an ankle bracelet on.
Which is a wonderful story. We actually do an interview with her. She is a wonderful story.
Yes, and so Nehemiah is really about social service delivery. My sister and mother are both social workers. And they wanted a context where they could serve the African American community through a cultural lens. And Nehemiah enabled us to do that. So these entities subcontracted us to do that work. So Nehemiah was created to meet some of the more temporal needs. Academic needs, youth leadership development, family support, counseling, mentoring, mental health support. So Nehemiah was created to do things that we didn't have the bandwidth to do.
So how much staff do you have for Fountain of Life? Do you know how many staff you have over there?
Well, it's interesting. We consider all of our staff, whether they're paid or not, staff. So like teachers or whatever. So in that regard, we have about 25.
And then for Nehemiah?
Probably about 15. It goes up in the summer because we run an all-day learning program for elementary children. So that goes up a bit, but 15 full and part workers.
That's a huge organization, just with both of them combined.
Well, we
That's
do
a lot.
everything from pre-K education to housing for men coming out of prison. We've, with the help of my colleague Anthony Cooper, we've placed over 200 men who were formerly incarcerated in jobs. We own 4 homes where we place men when they come out of prison. And so we serve the full gamut of the African American community. We're now in the process of launching more support programs for African American moms, for women. Because when we talk about, as my sister Loleta reminds me, when we talk about the African American family, for the most part, we're talking about black women because that's what's holding it down. So it continues to be a full support of the black family and giving it the strength and the capacity to really succeed here in Madison.
So now let's talk about Just for Anger. This is the thing that been talked about for how long has Just for Anger been around?
The article was written in 2013, so it's been almost 4 years.
4
if you
years.
can believe it. Town hall meeting was 3 years ago.
Wow, time is flying. So let's talk a little about Just for Anger. We have Fountain of Life, Nehemiah, and Just for Anger, because then it's to come to other full questions that people want to hear about, right?
Justified Anger, as you remember, resulted from an article I wrote about a number of things that happened to me, but basically, it just chronicles growing up black in Madison. And you come to a point, I'm sure you've had this moment, Henry, it's probably why you created Madison 365, when you said, enough's enough, I want to tell my story and I want to control the narrative. And so I think after being pulled over by the police right outside the front door where you came in. I mean, I was close enough to almost touch the door. And then giving a presentation on the dismal reentry and recidivism statistics for prisons and ex-offenders here in Wisconsin. I gave an update to Downtown Rotary where someone thanked me for not being an angry black man. And I didn't know I was angry until she thanked me for not being angry. And at that point, I just said, I need to talk. I need to tell someone what I'm thinking. It resulted in an article. And then people said, well, what's next? So it was never meant to be a thing. It was meant to be an article. I feel like Jerry Maguire sometimes. It was a memo. Remember, he wrote that memo, then it changed everything. But so many people resonated with it. Black men wrote me from prison. Mothers wrote me and said, this resonates with me. This is what my son said. And then men started telling me their stories. Women started telling me their stories. And so it evolved. I won't bore you with the details. But what we realized was we had this racial disparity and very little response to the Race to Equity report, and even more dismal response to the State of Black Madison that the Urban League put out a few years before that. And so I started asking the question, what's really going on? And does Madison need a wake-up call? And the reason we didn't respond is because we didn't believe the reports, because we didn't think we had problems. So I realized that part of the work of Justified Anger is letting people know that there is a problem and there can be solutions, but not until we start acknowledging that we do have a problem. And so that's really was the premise of Justified Anger, was stating that there's a problem. And we did something that we felt was unique. Let's create an agenda by African Americans that will be implemented by the broader community. Because what typically happens is there are problems, and white funding organizations will fund white social service organizations that will try to reach out to the black community. And when the community does not respond appropriately because the services are not germane to their needs nor culturally competent or relevant, then they're written off. Well, they wouldn't come, they're not concerned, they don't want to participate, they're lackadaisical. No, it just, you put tofu in front of somebody that wants steak, or steak in front of someone that's not carnivorous, and they didn't respond. So I got tired of the community being demeaned because they didn't respond to futile attempts, or feeble attempts sometimes, to meet their needs. So we spent time listening to ex-offenders, formerly incarcerated individuals, single moms, African-American kids. I went to every high school and interviewed black boys about what they needed, what they saw. And we took a snapshot of what the black community said would be helpful in moving a needle for them in terms of eradicating racial disparity. So that was really the impetus and the work.
So I think
Justified Anger.
for Justified Anger, there's been a lot of different questions about it. But I think in the beginning, I think people saw this as the plan for Black Madison. And this is going to take on all the different issues and challenges that were happening in the black community. Did you see it that way? Or did you see it was a part of the solution? Or how did you see it when you rolled out? I just remember at the time,
That's a great
the broader Madison definitely thought this was going to save Black Madison.
Well, Madison's always looking for the next Martin Luther King Jr. They want the miniature. You know, in your days as a politician, you know, they dubbed you. There are a couple of us that they'll tap on the shoulders and say, we think you got what it takes. But when you come out and you challenge the status quo, and then you begin to bring black people together, I think sometimes the attitude was twofold. One was, please, we need some help. Or if you think you can do better, then do it. But, I mean, let's consider the facts. County budget for human services is $282 million. School board budget is, school district budget is $500 million. The county budget is $500 million. How do people expect black people with $1 million to fix all these issues and all these problems? It was a snapshot of the issue. I can't tell the superintendent what to do. And we're colleagues, I respect her, we work well together. I can't tell DOC or whomever, get rid of CCAP. I don't have the pull. If I did, I would have pulled it. But it was an opportunity. Our Madison plan was an opportunity to say, we need to do things on this level if we're gonna change the needle. But what I wanted people to do was to look at the plan and say, okay, I'm working in the education arena or criminal justice. What can I do that lines up with this? In this community, it's almost as if people will stop sometimes and say, black people, please tell us what to do. You know, when the sirens go off, it might go off today because it's looking kind of ominous outside. I know what to do. Go in the basement. If you don't have a basement, get in the tub. Go in the closet, get in the ditch. They tell you what to do. The sirens have been going off and people are saying, tell us what to do. Write a report. We've had reports up the wazoo ad nauseum. We still have the racial disparity that we want. So write a report so we can know what we're not doing. Madison has enough reports. Haven't we written enough reports? Haven't we read enough reports? Haven't we ignored enough reports? And so our work became focused on mobilizing people. Our hashtag was Mobilize Madison. Because the issues are so overwhelming and you feel that you live in this incredible community, and then it is statistically proven, data driven, that you live in the worst community for black people in the entire nation. We all took a black eye over that. And when that happens, apathy sets in. Well, I don't know what to do. You know, if I try to help, am I being paternalistic? If I don't, am I being a racist? If I challenge the system, am I angry? If I just live the good middle class black life, am I complicit? So folks didn't really know what to do. So we said, let's just start mobilizing people to get involved. And so we had our US history class. We had 400 people who went through that class, who registered and paid. But at the same time, we started finding ways to build pipelines for African American leaders who are emerging. How do we bring more people into the pipeline? Because you and I can't do this alone. We have wives, we have families, we want to live, we have health that we've got to take care of. And so I'm trying to create more people to put them in the pipeline.
So let me stop you for
Sure.
a minute though, because I know our Madison plan. So our Madison plan was basically the plan out of justified anger, the overall the representative plan of what you want to happen through justified anger, right?
Right, I want to have happen in our community. We wanted to highlight it. But I said at the rollout, this is a $20 million project. To do all of this, this would take $20 million to make this.
Over how long?
I mean, forever. I mean, honestly, when you think about the overhaul that
But at the time, you said there was a $20 million over,
you know,
6
20
years,
over
10
6
years?
over 10 years, I think we could begin, because you could create positions, you can start new entities. But when you don't have that kind of money, you leverage the systems that you have.
And so how much have you fundraised at this point for Justified Anger?
Probably about $575,000.
To me, that's amazing.
It is. It really is. Of course, when you're trying to raise $1.5 million, as I said, we need $1.5. We really need $20 million to make a dent, because this is a huge problem, folks. Because that's
still small. $20 million
it is,
overall problem is
Definitely,
still.
it really is. I mean, technically, honestly, if you had $10 million a year over a course of 2 decades, you could begin to make a dent, because we need to hire more black teachers and social workers and have after school programs, so many things.
So, but you're saying $1.5 million. So you were saying that you were
that would have been able to help us to at least leverage the mobilization process.
And you wanted to raise that over what? Over a year?
I wanted to raise that over a year.
Okay.
And so it's been 2 years, and we're at close to a third of that. And so we made a decision to do some creative things to make the dollar stretch. For example, I built a relationship with TDS, and they loaned an executive to us, Patrick Yates, for a year, to help be the project, the operations director for Justified Anger, to help us to put our strategies together. We got a grant from the city to hire our community organizer, Jackie Hunt. We picked one community.
Jackie was on that.
We decided to focus on one community because of the grassroots leaders who were there, and because of the opportunities in the community, and because over the years Nehemiah had worked there. Over the past 2 decades we've worked there. But the focus was, how do we help to organize and mobilize the community, the resources in the community, so that when we're ready to move and invest in the next community, we would have helped to marshal the resources so that the workers and the projects in Meadowwood would be totally funded by the folks and the entities in Meadowwood. Because our vision is leave each community in a place where they're self-sustained for their outcomes. So that's our work. So in training the pastoral leaders there, and training the grassroots leader there, and trying to fund some of the upstarts, creating better dialogue. The whole idea is that as we step away, the leaders who were there when we arrived will have built better relationships with some of the more resourced partners, so that there are actually positions that are created to carry on the mission that the community has come up with. That's not our plan, it's the community's. That's our vision, and we're moving closer to that.
So how do you deal with, because being a black leader in Madison, dealing with some of the challenges, some of the critique of having it's a big mission, big vision, big plan. It's almost never been done, bringing those type of people to one room to create our Madison plan. But there's been some critiques about Justified Anger. How do you deal with those critiques of people say about accountability, fundraising, what's he doing, et cetera? I mean, I think you laid out some of it right now.
But what do I do?
But yeah, how do you?
I cuss people out in my mind. I think that's
Can a
one
pastor
thing.
do that? Can a pastor
In his mind, yeah. I mean, I'm probably not supposed to, but I'm sorry, Mom. Because it hurts, It hurts
of course, because you're doing it for them.
Because you do it for the community. The other thing is, I realize, as a pastor, you always take criticism. Why are you building a facility you could feed the poor? So that, why are you wearing what you wear? Why are you driving what you drive? So I'm used to living in a fishbowl, so to speak. But I've been in obscurity for like the last 26 years of my public ministry. I write an article and people kind of, say, oh, he's been here. We've been here since '87 in this spot. But people didn't know what we did or what was inside here because we just served kids, served families, buried people.
You're just doing the work.
Just doing the work, man. But what happens is, there's a mentality that I think exists in this community and other places that there's not enough to go around. And so I think because there's such an infatuation with the key black leader, I think other black leaders think that there's not enough love in the community for them. And so on one hand, I'm hurt by criticism. On the other hand, it's par for the course. Then thirdly, it's sad because the thought is there's not enough to go around. And it's human nature. We've had 3 failed attempts on this facility. Then Mount Zion builds this great, beautiful place a half mile from here. But I went to the groundbreaking, I went to the dedication, because I've learned to believe and understand over 3 decades of ministry that God has everything that we need and things happen in time. And that if I learn that what's for me is for me, I don't have to be jealous or critical of others. And so part of what I want to share, even with my critics, is that if we work together, we can put a demand on the resources of this community. But I think at the root of it, there are people who really care about their community, and they're afraid that outsiders are going to come in and dry up resources. 1, that's not my desire. 2, Madison is not going to dry up of resources. Madison is very well resourced.
We're resource rich.
We're resource rich. But what we got to do is really, really work together, because when we don't, that gives funding Madison an opportunity to say, see, I knew it. But you and I can sit here and name 20 white men who are beefing, 20 white women in the nonprofit world who have beefed over the years, and it's not called, white jealousy, white issues. It's just, there's strong personalities.
Well, that's interesting.
You and I beef for.
We beef all the time.
Right.
And I win usually.
Right. Oh yeah, right. I just hang up. Or even the thing that happened on Facebook with Michael.
Right.
What's going on? There's this black monolith. 2 black men can't have a different opinion. Now, we weren't going back and forth on stuff. He had some feelings about some stuff and he stated it. But by mid-morning, he was at my office saying, man, I shouldn't have did that. He said, I knew it. He said, people told me, so I want to come over here. And then he walked through my office and apologized to my wife. He said, I want to talk to your daughter. I said, man, my daughter called me from work almost in tears. He said, I want to apologize to your daughter. So that happened, and by noon, it's gone, it's pulled down. But people still want to know what's going on, what's happened, as if, our mayor and county executive have never had a disagreement, or heads of United Way and other places. We're leaders, we're headstrong. There are things we're not going to see eye to eye. And we're also prone to thinking there's not enough resources to go along. What we realize is, as we work together, we can do more. And that was actually part of Michael's conversation to me when he came by to apologize. He's like, look, I want us to work together. Can we do that? And he was honest. He said, man, if I were you, he said, I can see you want to be leery, but I give you my word. I really want us to work together in this community. But if you focus on something that had lived for 3 hours on the internet, as opposed to 5 years of partnership together, we're not a monolith. We're going to knock heads, and it's probably not the last disagreement. Hopefully it won't be on Facebook,
right,
but it won't be the last one. But that's just part for the course when you're leaders. But we move on. But the community can't keep staring us down, saying, well, why did that happen? Because we're headstrong men, because he had an opinion. I didn't agree with the opinion, and it went down. But we moved on.
What I like about what you're saying is I always tell people Martin needed Malcolm. Malcolm needed, Martin.
Sure.
Martin needed Thurgood. So different personalities, strong personalities, had different ways about going about things.
Right.
And I sometimes think that the broader community thinks that we all think alike and we all have to, we all listen to Jay-Z, or we all listen, like we all are.
We
this,
don't?
I haven't listened to Jay in a while, but I love
But
your whole.
But you're absolutely right. And so what they do is, Henry, they get us together and they say, so what do you think about Henry? And they'll ask you what you think about me. And ask me what I think about Harold Rayford. And then, well, what do you think about this new guy at Mount Zion?
All good brothers.
All good brothers. They're all my colleagues. But they're asking as if they're trying to find something negative or
So my take on that, and we've kind of been through these things before. We always have honest conversations.
Sure, and I appreciate that.
Always honest conversations. Is that we don't buy into that, right? So
Right.
for the young leaders coming up, or aspiring leaders or emerging leaders who are coming up and hearing this interview, I think it's important that you kind of give some examples of what do you do to not buy into when they try to divide. Like I give a perfect example from Ask 365. When I was first talking to funders about Ask 365, they would ask me about justify anger, right? And I'm thinking about, we're a media site. What does that have to do with?
What does that have to do with
justify anger? Like they're doing totally different worlds, but to the funder, they're thinking
because we're both
black, and that could create some divide because
Of course.
that's the abundance. Well, wait a minute now. Either I have to say something not justify anger down to get this money, or what do I do?
Exactly.
Right? And that's what creating this divide. And I think that was some of the stuff going with the mayoral stuff, which I think that was part of it from his perspective, not your perspective, from
Sure.
the mayor's perspective. But so how
I
do
mean,
you,
sure, not from my perspective.
Right. But I think when you have the resources and money, and there's such a need in our community, how do leaders, especially leaders of color, deal with the need of helping the community, and then needing these resources and not selling out, for a basic lack of a better word,
Sure.
and creating division in your community?
That's a great question, too. One, you have to understand what your purpose is. And so when I'm out in the community, I remember the 20 people who validated me as a leader, who put their trust in me. And $500,000 is a lot of money, but it's not enough for my integrity. I mean, you'd have to get really closer to my price for me to sell my soul out. And
$10 million?
$500,000. Well, even that, you gotta up it a little bit. But because I believe that I have an authority above me, and I have to give an account. I mean, I can say whatever I want to you or the media, but at the end of the day as a man of faith, I know that I can't lie to God, and I believe that. I mean, this I do believe.
And I believe that.
Yeah, so I'm not going. So I have no reason to play around with that because this is a small town. It'll come out. But the other thing is you have to keep your focus on really what your purpose is. I have a sense that I'm a networker, that I bring folks together. So when you're a network and bridge builder, you feel walked on sometimes. You can't get in your feelings. So what I got to really fight is not getting my feelings. But the other thing is just helping to set good expectations for folks. This is what, and maybe just communicating better. One of the things that I'm really working on in light of all that's happening is just communicating more clearly, over communicating what we're doing, because we have a newsletter, we send out updates. Contrary to what others have said, we had an update right here in this sanctuary a few months ago. Here's what we're doing, here's where we're going, here's our goal for the next 3 to 5 years. And so we've been
For our
careful.
Madison plan you're talking
For
about.
our Madison plan. So, because we want to keep the community in the know. But what I do from my heart is I get myself surrounded by positive folks who know that this is hard. And so when I'm feeling frustrated or want to give up, I have people who say, you can't, because of the people who you said you want to serve. So you have to really keep pressing. Another thing I want to say is you got to be committed for the long haul. And so one of the things I would say to people who may be just wondering about this work or who are new and younger, if they think the older folks could move a little faster, I thought the same thing when I was 28. When I started, the Errol Davises, the Steve Brongans, the Maleles, the John Odoms, come on, what's taking so long? Let's get this ball let's get this thing moving. So I understand being young and seemingly invincible, and I get that. I get that mentality. So I understand those thoughts. But what Odom and Malele said to me, either verbally or non-verbally, is what I want to convey to the younger folks. Give us 30 years. Wait 30 years. Are you relevant? Are you still in tune to the needs? Are people still asking for your input and your support? Although people may be newer to Madison and may think that I'm just coming to the scene, I've been at this for a minute. I've been at this for 30 years. And so in some ways, I've earned the right to speak out against the broader community, to challenge even our own community, but to be in support of our community. So I'm not new at this. And so for folks who think that it's easy work, see me in 30 years and see if you're still around, still healthy, still relevant.
Longevity, there is something to say for longevity.
It's been 30 years, and if I say so myself, I'm still relevant.
I'm in Southside, as much as relevant as Southsiders can be. Before we go, I just want to, is there anything else you think you want to address? I mean, I know there's been, questions about justified anger.
Sure.
Is there anything you want to address? Can you tell us, what do you think a year from now, where do you think Justified Anger will be?
Sure.
And are there steps in the place to give people our community some piece of where you're moving forward? Because you said you did some 3 months ago. Is there something else that should be doing?
Sure. I think I'd like to say a couple of things. We want the community to be involved. So first of all, follow us. We're strengthening and broadening our communication plan. But when you're starting up something, you communicate to those who are following you. So on Facebook, on Twitter, people who are reading our blogs. So find a way to get into our network, please. So go to our Nehemiah website, or go to mobilizemadison.com. Can I say that can I give a website out like that?
You can cut a check.
I'll cut a check.
Right.
Mobilizemadison.com or Nehemiah.org.
2 checks.
But you can, got you, man. But so that people can see what we're doing and join up, because that's how we communicate regularly. We're finding ways to broaden our circles. You were generous enough to let me, to want to ask me about what we're doing so we can reach more people. So please do that. The other is, let us know how you want to be involved, because we want to be involved. I think the tall task here is, I've got to, Justified Anger is really about holding a spotlight on the issues. With Nehemiah, we're delivering programs. So I think when people look at Justified Anger, they want to know, well, what is the program? Have you started a job program? Are you creating housing? I don't want to duplicate what people are already funded to do for our people. I'm not going to go and create a parallel society when these white-led organizations have been already funded to counsel our kids, give social work services to our kids, police our kids, educate our kids.
I don't want to say, but that's part of the problem, Madison. There's so much duplication of services.
Right.
And there's some people who do it really well and the people who don't do it well, but we fund the people who don't do it well.
Right.
And we don't give the people who are doing it well the resource they need
Right.
to keep it expanding.
And if you read through the plan, all 62 pages, we'll say we are not creating programs, because that would then make me compete against Nehemiah and my colleagues. I love my colleagues in the nonprofit world, and so most of them. That's tongue in cheek. But so we're not trying to create that. But we're trying to hold a spotlight on the issue so people can't turn away. We're trying to convince our white colleagues to not be apathetic, that you can enter into this space to help us out. We'll educate you through our U.S. history class so you know the issues, so that you can help us dismantle, not just become better tutors or mentors. You can actually talk to your own kids, your own PTOs, your own churches, your own HR department, so that you can help us to dismantle that. But at the same time, listening to African American people, so that this is not running away from the community, but engaging the African Americans who work for the state or the university, who are the grant writers, the academicians, who can help us think through goals and objectives. That's a tall order to hold a line for white Madison, the campus blacks, community blacks, nonprofit folks, single moms, folks coming out of prison, to say that this is our Madison, and we all have a role to play in this. And what we're trying to do is really leverage those relationships. TDS is one with getting Patrick here, but we're doing that to bring volunteers in, and we're developing them, not just giving them a racial sensitivity, but when we teach U.S. Black history, man, Henry, they have a paradigmic shift. They say, wait, we didn't know this. Why weren't we taught this? Because we were educated. Who left this out of our history books? Then they begin to understand that something's happened to separate us. So we're training future board members in Black organizations, should we choose to elect them, future funders, future volunteers. So we're not training all of these folks so that they sit around and have Justified Anger parties.
How many people are in those trainings?
Now we've taken 400 through.
And that's the second year?
Second year. First year, we had 150 who paid and signed up. We averaged 130. This past year, we had 250, we capped it, paid folks, but we averaged about 160 people who showed up every Monday.
Majority
for 9
white?
weeks. 98% white.
And that's good and bad. I mean, I think black folks, we should be knowing our history a little bit more.
But
too.
we are. So I'm designing one. I'm working with Dr. Christy Clark Pujara from the African American History Department to do something just for the Black community. What I didn't want us to do is to have a history class while some of our white colleagues practice their knowledge on us, or to raise their hands and say, that's not true. I couldn't set Black people up that way. So I'm doing something just for African Americans to hear our history. Because if we want to scream, cry, run the aisles, we can hear it. Because some of that stuff, when it came to lynching and what happened to the families, even though that was my undergraduate degree, it still hurts to say it, to talk about it. So our whole thing about how do we mobilize people, so of these 400, we're pushing them, get involved. Not just read a book and be sensitive, but you know what, we need to stock a food pantry.
And is that a Justified Anger program?
That's a Justified Anger program.
And how much staff do you have for Justified Anger? I know you have for Fun in Life, you have about 25, 15 for Nehemiah. How much is Justify Anger right now?
Well, with full and part time, we have about 5 staff that help us with operations, communications, evaluation, and mobilization of folks. So we called a potluck of people in the history class. We had 120 people show up. We're stocking food pantries. I can go to these folks and say, we need to raise money for this family. And they have said, we're here. If there's a meeting we need to show up at, these folks have said, we want you to mobilize us. And after we have our history lecture, we break up in 25 small groups to discuss it in this building. The facilitators are the graduates from last year's class. So the whole idea is not just to educate people. We're saying you're not yet allies, but once you know history and the issues, and you're willing to help us to dismantle these issues and not just wait for black people to do it, then you become allies. And another thing I'll add is, have we run out of tape yet? You still okay?
No.
Well, you know you were 15 minutes late, so you'll be a few minutes.
But we're fine. We're not on the tape yet.
Let me just say this, and another part of mobilizing folks that I need to talk more about is that around those major areas of concern like education and criminal justice, we are gathering representatives of key stakeholders in those areas to work together. So for example, with education, we meet monthly to come up with a strategy that we will work on together to move the needle. UW, Edgewood, Madison College, Odyssey, Omega, Boys and Girls Club, Urban League, Nehemiah, I might be forgetting One City. The representatives of these groups who touch and serve our kids educationally meet here monthly to agree on a strategy that we will hold together. And we're not producing a report, we're producing things that we're going to work on together. With the criminal justice team, the DA is there, federal prosecutors, the head of the public defender office, sheriff, judges, police officers, social service agencies. We meet monthly to agree on, okay, here are the issues. Which one are we going to work on together? We have DOC there. This is unprecedented. Not to come together to produce a report, but to build a relationship so that our agencies, once we're finished, and we're not trying to rush to be finished, will be intertwined so that we become more used to working together than working apart. That's a huge undertaking, but that's about mobilization. So, and what happens in that circle is, let's just say the sheriff has something he's trying to push, or someone from DOC. Because we're developing and we're building trust in that group, we are able to support some of those issues.
Be able to influence them also a little bit more.
Influence them, but we're doing all of that together. And I'm not saying here's the agenda. We're deciding on the things that we're going to accomplish just over this next year. Then there'll be another item the year after that. But to bring those groups that have been so siloed together is a major undertaking. But if people are looking for programs, how many mentors did you hire? How many after-school programs did you start? I think we funded those programs' efforts quite well. What we don't have are places to talk and really work together and let the walls come down and say, this is our Madison. So I feel proud sitting in a group where I have a federal prosecutor, a judge, the sheriff, the DA, Linda Ketchum from MOM, Jerome Dillard from Expo, recovering drug addicts, formerly incarcerated people, and we're talking about and police department.
So
we're talking about what's going to make our
Justify
city.
Anger, I'm hearing you say it's a mobilizing organization. And it's flexible, it sounds like,
Yeah,
too.
I'm sorry, I was getting excited.
No, that's what you're a pastor. That's
Right.
what you get a sermon. That's what y'all do. And praise Jesus.
How will we know? Do you go to church?
Oh, wow.
Keep going, I'm sorry.
Yes, I do. Life Center, I do go to church. So you're a mobilizing entity.
Yes.
And it sounds like you're flexible. That sounds like you're not so structured and rigid that you're worried about programs, whatever. You're worried about what's going on at that time to serve the people, mobilize people. That's what I'm getting. Like you're not so focused on the program as being rigid. You're really talking about you're flexible and bring people together and bring people together.
Our program is mobilization because there are enough programs out here. And let's just face it, program is a technical solution. You cannot fix racial disparity in this community with a program. Hire 100 black teachers. It's not going to fix it if parents are not also employed, they're not involved, the teachers are open and have the resources, smaller classrooms, kids are eating in the morning. No entity can fix that with a program. But because we're so used to trying to just fix things with the program, we don't understand how to undertake systemic realities.
So you're still fundraising?
Yes.
So you are still fundraising?
We still are. We've launched a campaign that's called Transform Our Madison.
There's a lot of our Madisons in here, so Transform Our Madison.
Because it's not just the white Madison or black Madison. We keep trying to push. We're going to rise or fall together. So it's called Transform Our Madison, because if we can challenge the systems and improve them, not just challenge them, not just throw a grenade. I mean, if we're criminal justice work team, the system is there, Henry. When you got DOC, the DA, public defender, you got the system is there. And when we can speak honestly and what we say doesn't leave that room, and we can challenge each other and even our own organizations to say what we're going to work on together, we can work with ex-offenders, formerly incarcerated men, all we want. But if the systems haven't been changed to accommodate them, we're going to see continued recidivism. So while we have great people who do great work with formerly incarcerated individuals, no one has all of these entities at the table from our community, setting the agenda, saying, this is what we're hearing from the community. So men and women, what are we going to do to fix our systems to make this community better?
So this is the last question, I promise.
Sure.
So when 4 years from now, 5 years from now, how do people know, and how do you know that justified anger accomplished its goals? What has happened to say, your piece would have said, we've done what we've accomplished.
Sure.
We've set out what we set out to do.
We would look at how we mobilized. So how many would-be white allies have we mobilized through our history class, and track them? I'm on a board, I'm funding for an organization, I'm volunteering, I'm choosing different curriculum for my fourth graders. How many communities have we left in a financially sustained position? How many communities have we, if we were talking about 4 years, I'd love for it to be 3 communities where there is an actual community support worker that's hired by the local churches and businesses and individuals, and they're not funded by outside entities, but they're supporting their own worker, developing sort of a block club mentality like we see in Chicago and other cities, that if we can do that in 3 communities, so that when programs do come into the community, they have a chance of catching traction because the community has been stabilized by someone who's really relevant and lives in that community. That would be a great part of it. How many leaders we've developed? You know, in our next interview, I'll talk about our emerging leadership program, the Leadership Capacity and Development Institute. Madison 365 is one of the sponsors of that program. We just graduated 9 emerging African-American leaders who are sharp. And part of their leadership training was to spend time in Meadowwood. They're actually helping us to write the Meadowwood plan up with the grassroots leaders in Meadowwood. We've had 2 community listening sessions. So our black leaders from, say, the school district, American Family, the county, the city, are working with grassroots individuals. Some of the ones we have in our video, Meadowwood video, they're writing a chapter in our what we're calling our plan for community transformation. So we want to make sure that our more resource black leaders and our grassroots black leaders know how to work more closely together, so we don't see some of what we've witnessed lately in terms of how we clash. But we want to move hundreds over the next 4 years, hundreds of emerging African American leaders through a community focused, community relevant leadership program. So I would say the whites we mobilize, the blacks we mobilize, the organizations we influence to know how to hire and to diversify. We want to measure how we have mobilized people so that in 4 years, I love to say that there are 2,000 people who are actively involved in addressing the issues of racial disparity, and not just the number of black entities that are doing it. I'd love to see 2,000 people who would say, I am active in making a difference in this community.
I just want to say, you've been talking about the South Side. I haven't heard nothing about the North Side. I mean, so there's anger on the North Side too. It's justified.
Is it?
There's anger and it's justified anger.
Well, if I lived on the North Side, I'd be angry too. So I'm certain that is justified.
I would love to see you. It's okay.
Why don't you bring some of the South Side brain power over to the North Side?
Well,
I'm kidding, North Side. You know what? You've got to start someplace. So don't be like the white people trying to tell me to take the whole city. What we have to spend for 3 years, many of our organizations get that for one of our programs for 1 year. So on top of being relevant and hiring people and loving the community, we're also very fiscally sound. Because to take a third of the money you ask for and still stretch it for 3 years and come close to your goals, I mean, that's making bricks without straw. And that's not patting ourselves on the back, but it shows commitment to the process. commitment to the process. And people can do what they're going to do. I'm going to still do this work. I'm going to still be angry because that moves me to action. And I'm going to still challenge the systemic realities. And I'm going to challenge our community to do better. So in mobilizing, that's not code for telling white people to get off their butts, but it's helping black people to get off their butts. You know what? Black people can take pot shots at me because white people have been doing it. People are like, oh, the black people have said. Let's do another show where I tell you all the things white people have said to me. White community leaders, stuff that they looked me in my face and said, please, what these black people have said is nice compared to what some of these white folks have said to me one-on-one, so.
But if we're doing it for the people, I mean, that's one thing, but you always just know why you're doing it, right? So you're never going to satisfy everyone when you're doing this stuff.
No, you're not. But it helps me to understand that I want to explain what I'm doing. You never can satisfy, but you can always inform. And so what I'm committing to is just getting more and more information out. So again, anyone who wants to help me in this process, go to our website, follow us on Facebook or Twitter, because once they say, I want to be on your list, they will get the updates. There are lectures coming up this summer. There's history classes this fall. There's training. There's volunteer opportunities. We want people to get involved, and we really, really, really want our African-American people to get involved. We spent, over a year listening. Some people came to sessions, some people didn't. And but it's not too late. I don't want anyone to feel left out. So please contact me, get on our list, and we promise to find ways to employ you, because the more the merrier, because this is our Madison. We got to make it better.
I like it. Well, thank you for your time, Pastor.
I appreciate you.
That's a nice handshake there. And I tell everyone, Master 365 is the best in the universe. Go ahead and say Master 365.
Madison 365 and Fountain of Life Church, Nehemiah, and Justified Anger are the best things since sliced bread.
I like that. You think I'm gonna use that too?
Are the best things since sliced bread. I have to say it again.
No, that's good. I got it.
You guys are gonna be able to edit that up?
As long as the Master 365 part we'll keep. The other part we might cut out.
Wow.
But thank you for your time.
Thank you.